Hello, welcome to another video. In my new series, The New World Order 2015 Media and Press Releases, Part 2. If you haven't seen Part 1, basically I've been saving printed out press releases every year since 2005. I check my Yahoo email and they have the little press releases there. Or I go to alternate news websites and I see press releases that pique my interest. I research, I investigate. I've been doing this for 10 years. So I have binders and boxes full of these printed out documents. They stack up high as this. How many ever that is. So here I'm starting out. There was a couple issues here about Albert Pike. And because I'm concerned about World War III seemingly looming in our future, and I do research, so some of these things I talk about on these videos, the New World Order 2015 media and press releases, will also include my research. So if you don't know who Albert Pike is, he was a leader of the Freemasons, the top leader, a general for the South during the war between the North and the South. Albert Pike in 3 world wars. If you're not aware of this, you need to look into it. But he wrote a letter. Albert Pike received a vision. We need to keep reminding ourselves of that. These people like Helena Blavatsky, Alice Bailey, Aleister Crowley, the evilest man alive, Albert Pike, and many others have visions, or incommunicato with some kind of interdimensional being, a demon, unclean spirit, Satan, Lucifer himself. Seems to be plenty of evidence of this. And my investigation is leading me to believe that these are in fact the UFOs and the aliens, the reptilians and the greys, and all that craziness. That's a mouthful. So Albert Pike received a vision, which he described in a letter that he wrote to Manzini, dated August 15, 1871. The letter graphically outlined plans for 3 world wars that were seen as necessary to bring about a one world order. Hence the name of this series of videos I'm making. And we can marvel at how accurately it has predicted events that have already taken place. So I'm just reading some highlighted portions. It appears that Carr learned about this letter from Cardinal Cairo Rodriguez of Santiago, Chile, who wrote The Mystery of Freemasonry Unveiled. The First World War must be brought about in order to permit the Illuminati. So here's a letter written in 1871 mentioning the Illuminati, because whenever I mention Illuminati to people I know in conversations, they start giggling and think you're a conspiracy nut. But here in the letter in 1871, the First World War must be brought about to permit the Illuminati to overthrow the power of the czars in Russia and of making that country a fortress of atheist communism. And if you're not familiar with the story of the Russian Revolution of 1917, got 2000 on my mind, where Marx, Lenin, Stalin, and all those people's goal was accomplished. They were out of Washington, D.C., New York City, and other major leadership places like probably London were responsible for sending men into Russia to kill the Tsar and his family. And in the preceding 10 plus years, some say, to kill 100 million Christians and other good people, non-Jews. Crazy. People don't know that. And they killed a lot of those people, FYI, by starvation. Least we forget the disarmament of people also, which allowed them to be killed. We might want to keep that in mind. The divergences caused by the agents of the Illuminati between the British and Germanic empires will be used to foment this war. So they had to create the war between Britain and Germany to be able to get into Russia. At the end of the war, communism will be built and used in order to destroy the other governments and in order to weaken the religions. Weaken the religions. That has been the aim of communism all along. We've gone over that. They had meetings, testified before Congress in the United States that they had sent agents into the churches to infiltrate the churches. Students of history will recognize that the political alliances of England on one side and Germany on the other, forged between 1871 and 1898 by Otto von Bismarck, co-conspirator of Albert Pike, were instrumental in bringing about the First World War. So here's Albert Pike having a vision, some kind of interdimensional entity. He wrote Morals and Dogma, and apparently he got that from some kind of master, interdimensional communication. The Second World War must be fomented by taking advantage of the differences between the fascists and the political Zionists. The war must be brought about so that Nazism is destroyed and that the political Zionism be strong enough to institute a sovereign state of Israel in Palestine. This is an Albert Pike's letter. 1871, they were plotting all that we are having to endure. The millions of people murdered in the Middle East. 9/11, which brought it about. World War I, World War II. This is all planned by some nefarious evil entities. Are they these alien, reptilians, greys, people living underground, which apparently even Hitler was incommunicado with, obtaining technologies? During the Second World War, international communism must become strong enough in order to balance Christendom, which would be then restrained and held in check until the time when we would need it for the final social cataclysm. So the final social cataclysm will be with the Christians, like in the United States and I'm sure Europe. The Christians against the non-Christians. The people who go with the gay agenda, transgender, decadent, perverted, bisexual, transsexual, whatever. Maybe bestiality. We know with the witchcraft covens and the Illuminati, from the many videos you can watch on YouTube and other research, people who have escaped the clutches of these groups, Illuminati, witchcraft, and other occultic groups, tell all. Like the Bohemian Grove, where they throw a baby into the fire. The cremation of care. I challenge anybody to look up witchcraft holidays. On the other hand, it might be more than you're mentally prepared for. Some of the images I saw. Some of the testimonies of people on the YouTube videos and other places about abductions of people off the street, smuggled into some little hole where they're having a satanic ritual, sacrificing a human being. Rabbi Marvin Antelman, in his book To Eliminate the Opaque, says in Hitler's diary, they abducted a man off the street in Munich, Germany, a gypsy, sacrificed him to bring forth an interdimensional being that could impregnate a girl laying on the adjoining altar to bring about some kind of super supreme race or beast. UFOs and aliens with body parts of humans with the deal they made with Truman and Eisenhower in exchange for technologies. These are stories that are out there. I've done many book reviews in my series Freemasonry and Satanism, and I have many more to do in that collaborate all this information. Like I said, if you go look up witchcraft holidays, you might find things that will just hurt your brain. So the communists want to destroy the world, and the communists were created by the Zionist Jewish folks, by the way, FYI, like Rothschild's banksters and all the other banksters and Hollywood crowd, Kabbalah people, witchcraft, Mystery School of Babylon, Illuminati, Freemasons, Rosicrucians, Knights of Malta, Knights of Columbus, Jesuits, Zionists, and so many more groups as mentioned in Constance Coombe's book. I made a video on that. Beware of the rainbow. And the rainbow is the symbol for the New Age as well as the gay agenda. And there was that one picture I showed in the video of a guy in the gay parade holding a big sign that says, "I bet hell is fabulous." What person in their right mind can even deal with that? How insane is that thinking? How small are the brains of people? Just my opinion. But back to this. After the Second World War, communism will be made strong enough to begin taking over weaker governments. Well, they're doing all this. In 1945, at the Potsdam Conference between Truman, Churchill, and Stalin, a large portion of Europe was simply handed over to Russia. And on the other side of the world, the aftermath of the war with Japan helped to sweep the tide of communism into China. Anyways, just some stuff here that's just too much to believe. I don't want to read all this. I'm supposed to be doing a flash review of documents and press releases and other media. But you can go look this up and read it in detail. I highly encourage you to do it. Okay, so we know about the war between the North and the South, the American Civil War. We know that Albert Pike wrote this letter in 1871, prophesizing the three world wars, detailing the purposes of how these World War I and World War II would come about. And apparently he was exactly correct. They followed their plan. And they're going to save Christianity to be destroyed in the end. And we can see that by all the stuff I've been going over. So anyways, 1871, I just thought it'd be FYI to pay attention to what happened back then, that Albert Pike was the general of the South. So the American Civil War was from 1860 to 1865. And the purpose, you're going to get this. The American Civil War, widely known in the United States as simply the Civil War, as well as other sectational names, was a civil war fought from 1861 to 1865 to determine the survival of the Union and the independence of the Confederacy. I believe it was much more than that. Remember, Pike was a general and the leader of the Freemasons for the southern jurisdiction of the United States. Remember, the South was a big area. A lot of plantation owners, ranches, a lot of people with wealth, a lot of people who were not a party to the Freemasonic, Illuminati, Zionism, Luciferianism. Remember, they were burning witches up in Salem, Massachusetts. So I think it was a big thing there to destroy those people in the South, those wealthy people. It was a power play, in my opinion. Because after they did destroy the South, the carpetbaggers came down from the North, took over the towns and the cities and the estates, plantations and farming, and it was just hell all over. So it was part of this whole thing. You can go look this up and get some serious, important information on Wikipedia. But what I think is interesting also is while they're having the Civil War in the United States, they were having a civil war for the same purposes, to try to unite the properties of Germany and a part of France and all that. The Franco-Prussian War. From 1870, and this was from 1861 to 1865. So whoever is controlling the world after the American Civil War turned their attention, because remember the North won, towards the Franco-Prussian War or Franco-German War. North Germany Confederation, even have the word Confederate in there, led by the Kingdom of Prussia. The conflict was caused by Prussians' ambitions to extend Germany unification. So we had the Civil War, because there were people in the North didn't want the United States to be split in half. And over here in Germany and unification, they wanted to, ambitions to extend Germany's unification. Prussian Chancellor Otto von Bismarck planned to provoke, this is another key thing, the things they do to provoke these wars, in the deception and the lies on the people like the Civil War, the puppet masters control this stuff. And we're going to see that becomes more obvious as I go on here. So Otto von Bismarck planned to provoke a French attack in order to draw the southern German states, Baden, Wittenberg, Bavaria, Hesse-Darmstadt, into an alliance with the North German Confederation dominated by Prussia. Bismarck erroneously created a diplomatic crisis over the succession to the Spanish throne, then rewrote a dispatch about a meeting between King William of Prussia and the French foreign minister, to make it appear that the French had been insulted. So like 911, it was an inside job to be able to enable we in the United States, in cahoots with England and other people, the Zionists, to invade the Middle East. And one other thing interesting, if you look at these pictures about the Civil War, notice the cannons and the destruction. That's the Civil War. And in the Franco-Prussian War, notice the similarity, the cannons and this destruction. Remember, wars are profitable to the banksters and probably even controlling desires from the Vatican, the Zionists, the kings and the queens. The people are always the pawns in this. The ones who are murdered, killing each other, and don't know their strings are being pulled, that they've been lied to over and over. And apparently, just so we know a little bit about World War I and why it happened, when they had that war back in the German-French War, from 1870 to 1871. So in that war, Germany won. You don't think that left some wounds? Well, one of the wounds that left, between France and Germany, they had a parcel of land, that little red spot there, that was confiscated by Germany, called the Alsace-Lorraine territory. And after World War I, when Germany was defeated, the land reverted back to France following World War I, a territory that has been referred to administratively as Alsace-Moselle. So there's a lot more here going on behind the scenes. The German-French Revolution, like our Civil War revolution. First the Germans won, and then in World War I, the French and England, the alliance, USA, won. So what's going to happen next? And another thing that was kind of interesting to me, a lot of people are mentioning in the United States now, the United States Empire. We're empire building. And I think we're controlled, according to the documentations I have here, by the Zionists. Like I keep saying, Prime Minister Sharon of Israel said in a heated argument in his Congress, you can look this up, don't believe me, don't worry about the USA, we control the USA. We know that in 1913, the Rothschilds and the banks of Germany and England and those people conspired with President Woodrow Wilson to create the Federal Reserve, which isn't federal, it's privately owned by them, which basically took over the money supply of the USA. And they've run the country into the ground at least 8 times. They've caused crashes where they buy up stuff pennies on the dollar. Remember, they're controlled by the Zionist Jewish folks, along with other powerful forces, the Jesuits, the kings and queens of England and Germany and other countries. These people into the mystery schools of Babylon, Masonic lodges, etc., etc., etc. And eight times in the USA since they took over the Federal Reserve in 1913, when they crashed everything, the people are unaware. They think it's a natural occurrence. It was all planned. According to my investigation. But anyway, so now the USA is being called the empire building. But it's really not we the people in the USA. We have very little say in what goes on. Our politicians don't consult us. They fabricate the polls and everything else in the propaganda press releases, which I'm going to go over and expose and expose and expose. But my point of this little map here, I think this map will kind of prove that we citizens worldwide are pawns in a very ugly game. And all indications indicate from all the weapons and aircraft carriers and other things the governments have been manufacturing, selling to other countries. The USA is selling tons of stuff to Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia right now is picking a fight with Iran. Apparently Saudi Arabia beheaded a bunch of people from a religious sect that are not of the sect that live in Saudi Arabia. It would be like the Catholics beheading the Protestants. It would be wrong. We agree on that? Anyways, I agree on that. The empire of all Russians, the German Empire, the French Republic, the Kingdom of Spain. The names of these countries. The United Kingdom of Great Britain. The names of these countries. The United Kingdom of Great Britain. The Empire of Russia. German Empire. Kingdom of Italy. Kingdom of Spain. Ottoman Empire. That was a big player there. In order to destroy all the countries in the Middle East. Where my finger is here, the purple. Ottoman Empire. in order to, this is the Mediterranean here. There's Greece. But in order to take over the lands of the Middle East, Israel, Palestine, it wasn't called Israel, Palestine, they had to break up the Ottoman Empire, and that was the purpose for World War II, I think. Probably broke it up somewhat in World War I. I need to research that a little bit more. But there's always been this plan, as Albert Pike exposes in his letter to Monsini in Italy. All right, so I keep saying this stuff is all planned. Civil War in the United States. And right after that, the Civil War between Germany and France. And right after that, World War I. Right after that, World War II. All planned and outlined. So you say, well, what evidence do we have that this stuff was planned? Well, here's another press release. Smoking gun emails reveal deal in blood, George Bush and Tony Blair. So right here, smoking gun email reveals deal in blood, George Bush and Tony Blair made as they secretly plotted the Iraq war behind closed doors a year before the invasion. So Tony Blair went to George Bush's house in Texas before the war and made some deals, and this has recently come out October 19, 2015. So I have a little bit of these discovered emails here. Okay, coming from Colin Powell. Your meeting with United Kingdom Prime Minister Tony Blair, April 5 to the 7th, 2002 at Crawford. Tony Blair is looking forward to the time he and his family will spend with you at Crawford to deepen their personal relationship with you and Laura. How nice. Buckingham's Palace approval of the trip, despite the Queen Mother's death, attests to the importance of the British government ascribes to Blair's meeting with you. Blair will want to discuss Afghanistan, Iraq, Middle East, Russia, and NATO enlargement, and trade and development. So if you don't think all this stuff is planned, wait till you find out what else is planned with these press releases I'm going to go over. Blair continues to stand by you in the U.S. as we move forward on the war on terrorism in Iraq. So 911 was an inside job. Any questions? If you've been watching my videos, you know that I collect books, have lots of books. And I watch a lot of videos, and it's becoming more clearer and plain that 911 was certainly an inside job. You can watch Building 7, which was not hit by a plane, literally dissolve right in front of your eyes if you watch it. And I challenge anybody to take one cinder block and try to make it dissolve. You're going to need some dynamite. And the firemen and everybody else and a lot of the evidence out there these days clearly say, we heard bang, 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 with planned demolition in those buildings. Because even the fire took down building Tower 1 and Tower 2 in perfect falling formation. This is all erected of steel and concrete. If you've ever been a kid trying to build a twig house or a playhouse or a house of cards and all that, it just doesn't happen that way. Anyways, Judy Wood wrote an excellent book, Where Did the Towers Go? Evidence of Directed Free Energy Technology. And so many notice how far Building 7 is from 1 and 2 on this picture. I think this is 1 and 2, and 7's way over here. And a huge hole in Building 6, which wasn't hit by a plane. That's an odd thing. Look at that hole. But maybe this was when it was cleaned up. Some of the steel hauled away. Something's not right. You watch the videos. Excellent book. See how far Building 7 is from 1 and 2? Oh, I didn't even know I had this in the book. But apparently I got this little card. We'll have to look at this a little further. But if you go take a look at the evidence of the videos on 911, it's plain that it wasn't some planes and the fires that brought them down. Building 7 wasn't even hit, and the fire had already gone out. It was planned. Anyway, so what else was planned? Presidents in Panama and other people assassinated all over the world who wouldn't cooperate with the New World Order. John Perkins, Confessions of an Economic Hitman, tells all that the elites who run the world were sending him and other people like him to talk all these leaders of all the countries all over the world. What are there, about 170 countries in the world? To borrow money, promising them a huge GNP, gross national product increase, lots of profits. If they would borrow millions and billions by the international banks, there's no one that they would not increase the profits in billions and trillions at all. They would go into bankruptcy. And these poor people in South America and elsewhere who had nice clean water, ate healthy foods, were forced to have their rivers and dams put in, rivers dammed up, all kinds of construction, move out of their healthy environment into these little block homes. And if they tried to defend themselves, they were machine gunned down all over the world to bring about this crazy world we have now. Nestor Webster talks about world revolution. A plot against civilization. So we had the French Revolution, Russian Revolution, Chinese Revolution, German Revolution, United States Civil War, and many other countries, attacks on Grenada, Panama, countries all over Central America, South America, taken over by these plotters of schemes. How many people have been killed and assassinated so they could put puppets in charge of all the countries all over the world? Even Pierre Manot, one of the conspirators to create the European Union, go look him up. Unbeknownst to most of the people in all those European countries, they were plotting way ahead of time to create a European Union. And interestingly enough, Pierre Manot, if you put his name into a numerology calculator, is 666. So I find this occultic, satanic situation pop up over and over and over. And if people still don't believe that the Illuminati and all this stuff with Albert Pike planning, talking about from a vision, demonic beings maybe, about the Three World War and the Illuminati in Albert Pike's letter, here is a Jewish author, PhD, Henry Macau, in Canada, writing a book, Illuminati, the cult that hijacked the world. And if there's still any doubts that 911 wasn't an inside job, please go buy this book and read it. I don't make any money off of advising this. You can see I read it pretty thoroughly. But it details all the little nuances Dick Cheney being in charge of the country, telling all of the U.S. Air Force jets to stand down before 9/11 happened. Lots of mystery and intrigue. So 9/11 was plotted so they could invade the Middle East. So back to my document here, a little supporting evidence there, that Blair and the UK are in Afghanistan with us for the long haul. So this email sent by Colin Powell, talking about Tony Blair going to George Bush's house a year before the invasion, almost a year. The UK welcomes the active politic, military, and financial aid the U.S. has provided to persuade Turkey to take on the IS Air Force leadership. Another document. Here's Tony Blair, George Bush, and Laura, I guess meeting at the airport. A second explosive memo from the same catch also reveals how Bush used spies in the Labour Party to help him manipulate British public opinion in favor of the war. The documents obtained by the Mail on Sunday are part of a batch of secret emails held on the private server of Democratic presidential candidate Hillary Clinton, which U.S. courts have forced her to reveal. Former UK Conservative Shadow Home Secretary David Davis said, "The memos prove in explicit terms what many of us have believed all along. Tony Blair effectively agreed to act as frontman for American foreign policy in advance of any decision by the House of Commons or the British cabinet." So again, the people are never told the truth, brought in on these decisions. There's plots and schemes behind our backs, and it gets much worse. He was happier to launder George Bush's policy on Iraq and subcontract British foreign policy to another country without having the remotest ability to have any real influence over it. For George Bush, pretending Blair was a player on the world stage to impress voters in the UK, while the Americans didn't even believe it themselves. Davis was backed by a senior diplomat with close knowledge of Bush-Blair relations who said, "The memo shows beyond doubt, for the first time Blair was committed to the Iraq War even before he set foot in Crawford, Texas." And it shows how the Americans plan to make Blair look an equal partner in a special relationship to bolster his position in the UK. I just research and report. You decide. And it gets worse. More pages. Sensational Blair expose. Your questions answered. So some people asked some questions. What was the Crawford Summit? The meeting between Blair and Bush at the president's Texas ranch in April 2002? 11 months before the outbreak of the war, the pair spent long hours discussing Iraq without their advisors, leading to suspicion that they privately cut a deal for the conflict. UK Ambassador Sir Christopher Myers said it was impossible to know whether a deal was signed in blood. What happened after Crawford? In September 2002, in an attempt to prove Saddam was a threat, Number 10 falsely claimed Saddam could deploy biological weapons within 45 minutes. And Mr. Blair went around the world trying to drum up UN backing for action against Iraq. So Iraq had nothing to do with 9/11. It was an inside job, as we were seeing with these documents and books. Despite mass anti-war protests, Britain and America invaded Iraq in March 2003 without the backing of the UN, And the way that they did it is just so horrific. It pains me to mention it. Shock and awe. Those troops marching on the ground in Iraq had nothing on the capabilities of the USA military. They were incinerated. And they've been being murdered ever since. Nothing ever got better. We agree. The Ukraine, nothing's getting better. Egypt, nothing's getting better. Afghanistan, nothing's getting better. It's all getting worse. Palestine, nothing's getting better. Syria, nothing's getting better. The United States, nothing's getting better. Ooh, they got plans for the United States. Got a couple more documents here. The invasion was declared complete in April 15, 2003, but the reason of war proved spurious, and Saddam's removal left a power vacuum. That was the purpose all along in all these countries, filled by warring factions which some say helped Islamic State rise. And if you've read anything about the Crusades from 1000 to 1300 AD, in John Robinson's book, Dungeon, Fire, and Sword, that I've gone over, they always got the Sunnis to fight against the Shiites, and the Shiites to fight against the Sunnis. And if you don't know what that is, it's basically getting the Catholics to fight against the Protestants, or the Protestants to fight against the Catholics. The Catholic religion believes that the Pope is the number one guy in charge, and the Protestants said they don't need the Pope to be in charge. And the Shiites and Sunni have the same thing. One group wants Muhammad and his descendants to be in charge, and the other group thinks that they don't need Muhammad and his descendants to be in charge. Playing on the people. More here, just in case you didn't know that stuff. Colin Powell. Stunning memo proves Blair signed up for Iraq even before Americans. Comment by former Shadow Home Secretary David Davis. Smooth-talking Blair would persuade skeptics that flimsy claims that Saddam had weapons of mass destruction were credible, and brush off claims that UN backing was needed. The UN was dismissed with contempt. So these people don't even listen to the UN when they don't want to. But then they use the UN when they want to, as we will see. Blair would say that the Allies would prevent bloody chaos in Iraq the day after Saddam fell. They did no such thing, as we all know. There was bloody chaos, and the people are fleeing the Middle East, and they're forcing them into the European Union, forcing them into the USA, when we're supposed to have a huge unemployment problem. What's with this? President Bush Sr. said, out of chaos and anarchy will come the New World Order. President Kennedy said that there is an evil conspiracy, so vast and evil that something like that, then he's going to expose it. Look where that got him. Loyal Blair would spare Bush's blushes for not making a public fuss about a U.S. decision on import tariffs which had devastated Britain's steel industry. Arrogant Blair desperately needed Bush's endorsement because his domestic policies were failing in Britain. Bush had to pretend Blair was his equal to enable him to convince skeptical British voters he was not America's poodle. Just stuff that more of these memos you can find that were disclosed. I got a couple more highlights here on one of the memos from the London embassy to Washington, D.C. Info, all European Union posts collective propriety. Iraq coalition building, UK Labour Party not yet convinced. So there was a big scheme here to convince the different countries and leaders and people. All fabricated, as we now know. For nearly a month, PM Tony Blair has made publicly clear his commitment to a more proactive Iraq policy. Reflecting the polled sentiments of voters, however, a sizable number of his Labour Party MPs remains at present opposed to military action against Iraq. So we know it was all planned. I did not plan all this stuff. I reached into my big box of press releases and documents and just grabbed a fistful, took a little glance at them, and at least organized them in a little way that they made sense. All right, one more here on the 8 responses to the smoking gun emails revealed deal in blood with George Bush and Tony Blair. The entanglement of the US, UK, and Zionism, see why it's important to read these things, is hard for all to see through. Now remember, Zionism, along with all the Freemasons, Illuminati, are all from the mystery school of Babylon. Their deity is Lucifer, known by many other names. That's what pagan means, pagan religion. From Osiris and his wife Isis. We've heard of Isis in the news. Horus was the son of Osiris and Isis. And he's represented by the all-seeing eye on the dollar bill. And as we all know, 100 years prior to today, in Albert Pike's letter, they had planned, even with Theodore Herschel in his book, The State of Israel we've gone over, who worked for one of the printing companies of the Rothschilds, the banksters who started out in Germany and now have banks all over the major countries, that they had planned to take over the land of Canaan, the Palestinians' land, 100 plus years ago, to create the state of Israel, to bring about some kind of biblical prophecy, to control the world. And one of their peeves is that they don't like so many people being in the world. And I think they've been lying about everything else, so I think they're lying about this. I do not believe there are 7 billion or 6 billion people in the world. FYI, I did a little chart, and I used my pendulum, just like I can check the quality of water or fine water in the ground under green streams. And whether it's true or not, the pendulum said there's about 1,220,000,000, thereabouts. So who are we to believe? The liars who are ruling the world, causing wars and murdering everybody? Or Mr. Pendulum? Just a little humor here. I don't believe there's as many people as they say they are. They're lying about everything else. And they've been killing people for quite a while. The entanglement of US, UK, and Zionism is hard for all to see through. But already the 3 civil wars of the US, Russia, and China. So like I said, we had a civil war in the United States. They had a civil war with Russia and France. They had a civil war in Russia. They had a civil war in China. Have a common denominator that the targeted countries were to be subdued with British free trade and be prevented from modernization to a competitive industrial status. And I might also point out that there were some gun confiscation things going on before the actual revolutions. I guess the oppressors, the communists, i.e. the Zionists, i.e. the Mystery School of Babylon, Jesuits, Masons, Knights of Malta, Knights of Columbus, Witchcraft Covens, Illuminati, Kabbalah, Hollywood, and so many more names that I keep saying. If you look up Constance Kumbi in her book, Beware of the Rainbow, she details all this out, as well as many other books. Another person here says, these disclosures are anticlimactic and are certainly a limited hangout. Talking about those emails about Blair and Bush meeting before the Iraq War. The whole point of 9/11 was a new Pearl Harbor to force Americans into war. A lot of us are getting this. However, the article has the U.S.-UK relationship exactly backward. The USA is a British colony. Blair was Elizabeth Windsor's legitimate ordering Bush to war. So who's controlling who? The USA controlling the Britons, or the Britons controlling the USA? Or as Prime Minister Sharon said, we control the USA of Israel. And is the Vatican Jesuit military arm controlling all of them, or are they all in cahoots together, which is more than likely. The rich elitists do not want to lose their positions of power. So they have a common enemy, and that would be the people of the world. And it gets worse. It was no secret, as the daily newspaper Kaylee Times of Dubai had printed an interview with someone who knew the Iraq would be taken down next year. So it made the Dubai newspaper over there next to Saudi Arabia that Iraq would be taken down a year before it was. They were having meetings. Well, you'll see right here in this press release here. What ties to this was to have 9/11 planning. This guy asked the question. The notion that most people will believe that involvement of countries like USA, Britain, and Australia in any world-like politic initiative gives a sense of global involvement. Diversity and the appreciation is horribly scary. Amen to that. The future is horribly scary unless we, the people, bring these people to court. Arrest the people involved in 9/11. The Israeli security companies in charge of the airport. George Bush's family members in charge of particularities, as mentioned in this book. A lot of strangeness going on. American Airlines or United Airlines, whatever it was, people shorting their stocks, knowing it was going to crash. A lot of questions, few answers. Okay, I'm sure that some VT authors will probably find some proverbial Talmudic meaning in these Blair's actions. And remember, apparently, in secret in the United States, they've passed some law that puts in effect, I guess instead of the Constitution of the United States, Noetic law, which calls for the beheading of Christians. We're going to go over that. Unbelievable. Crazy stuff. But it's just that Britain is a state sponsor of Zionism. Again, the Zionist banksters elitist put our political people, presidents and leaders in those positions. They're bought and paid for. They all come from the Masonic lodges, Illuminati. I mean, Obama came out of nowhere. He had no credentials. He doesn't even have a birth certificate. It was planned. As well as American imperialism, which is in fact British imperialism. Where would American imperialism come from? I remain completely by the idea that the poodles in this world are USA and Israel, and that Britain is their master. And again, who controls Britain? We think the Zionist Jewish folks are in control of everything. But are the Jesuits really in charge? And throughout thousands of years, the Venetians, or the Zionist Jewish folks, were the banksters for the Vatican and all the countries that went to war, even during the Crusades, from 1000 to 1300, 300 years. 8 times they invaded the land of Palestine and slaughtered everybody, knee-deep in blood. The people of the world are awake, and your murdering times are over. Next step, the gallows. This is the guy who wrote this comment October 19, 2015. What's scary to me, though, if you look up on the YouTube videos, truck drivers are reporting delivering guillotines to the military bases and maybe FEMA camps. Go look into that. because the Noetic law calls for the beheading of Christians. So there is some kind of sinister stuff going on in the background. A friend named Bob told me the Gulf War was coming 6 months before it happened, because he said he noticed the USA had spent 6 months getting all the Abram tanks into Kuwait. So they were moving the tanks into Kuwait 6 months before the war. It's all planned. He added the tanks were designed for the Middle East and are twice as heavy as the bridges in Europe will support. In other words, when the decision was made to manufacture them, the plan to invade someplace in the Middle East and not defend Europe was already in play. So when they were manufacturing those tanks, they wouldn't have worked in Europe because they were too heavy for the bridges. Now I said so we know all about this conspiracy stuff. And I've gone over this before, and I'm going to continue to go over it because it is just too much to believe. But just like between all these revolutions and all these civil wars, they disarmed the people and they readied everything for a situation. Right now, they're doing something, duping everybody, propaganda, fooling, deceiving everybody with global warming, global cooling. And even now, I noticed in my book here that I went over in the last video, I didn't mention this earlier, by the Rothschilds, David D. Rothschild. The live earth, look at the top there. The live earth, that's New Age stuff. Satanic. Luciferian. Aleister Crowley, do as thou wilt. Forget the 10 Commandments, which say don't murder and steal and adultery. But live earth, global warming survival handbook. Now what is it? Global warming or climate change? So I notice on the bottom of this, "77 essential skills to stop climate change or live through it." Now, initially I'm thinking here, wait a minute, how can you stop climate change? That's like trying to stop the world from turning. And it says climate change there, but it's a global warming handbook. So what is it? And we know with that Nobel literate Adam guy that I went over in one of my videos, I'll get his name again for now. I think it's important to repeat this as many times as I can. But the Nobel literate, I-V-A-R, last name G-I-A-E-V-E-R, Ivor Gavier, I-V-A-R, G-I-A-E-V-E-R. Nobel literate smashes the global warming hoax is the name of the video on YouTube. And there are many others. But satellite data, he goes on to prove that there is no global warming. There's no significant temperature change. I will say that there is air pollution from the smokestacks and other industries, which needs to be cleaned up. But it is not affecting the weather. The planet's too big. There's too many green plants. The CO2 is actually food for trees and grass and plants. So, and global warming would make the whole planet bloom if there was global warming, which in historic times when we had global warming periods, things were crazy, healthy, and cities and people and crops, tomatoes, potatoes, everything. There were no famines. It was a fantastic world. And then when they had an ice age, that's when they had the dark ages, and they had the crops suffered and people starved. I'll agree to that. Go look at that video. Nobel literate smashes the global warming hoax. Nobel literate Ivor Gavier. Speech at the Nobel Literates meeting 1 July 2015. So my point is, The United Nations is taking the lead, and I suspect the same people, the Zionists, the people in London, Britain, DC, the Bushes, Clinton, Obama, the people who control them, are behind this. It's a lie, just like global warming is a lie. This is a lie. It's like in the last video we saw where they were trying to, they're going to, fence off over 50% of the property in the USA and then have properties around that, boundaries or protected barriers. And you think they're going to stop there? And they want to reduce the population according to the USA Georgia Guidestones. So sustainable development. End poverty in all its forms everywhere. They want to fence off all the property of the world and force everybody into cities. What are they going to do? They're going to feed everybody free of charge? We know they're already microchipping people and changing the whole structure of our world, where you won't be able to buy and sell unless you accept the chip. End hunger, achieve food security, improve nutrition, promote sustainable agriculture. My philosophy is, I don't believe a darn thing you're saying. I want to see what you're doing. And from what I see, what they're doing is they're murdering people all over the world while they come out and say they're going to do all these nice things. They're not going to create some utopian world where everybody gets to go be an artist or a musician or do the choice career education you want free of charge. Why are they charging people an arm and a leg now to go to college, and when they graduate, it takes them half their career to pay back the school loan? That doesn't sound like they have the well-being of we the people at heart. Ensure inclusive and equitable quality in education and promote lifelong learning opportunities for all. Again, what are they doing against what this document is saying? They have these guidelines for policymakers. They're sneaking in all of our counties and towns and cities, and they're having everybody prepare to enforce these kind of guidelines here with this document. How many pages is this? I went over this in previous videos. Achieve gender equality and empower all women and girls. Gender equality and empower all women and girls. I don't see anything about men and boys here. Empower all women and girls. The bottom here. And they're trying to make all the men gay. By the way, that is a New Age feminine, I guess part of the religion is feminism. And basically, if all the men are feminism, I guess murdering them will be a lot easier than if they were masculine. And if they disarm everybody, it'll be a lot easier to kill them too. Anyways, on to this Sustainable Development Knowledge Platform. Ensure availability and sustainability management of water and sanitation for all. Ensure access to affordable, reliable, sustainable, and modern energy for all. Do you really think they're going to give us, consider what we've already been through, all these freebies? Why are they causing all these crisis actor terrorism situation, 911, murdering the people in the Middle East, creating the Ukraine overthrow, crashing stock market, all kinds of other insanity that most people will agree these days, if you have a conversation, that they think the world's a little crazy. Promote sustained, inclusive, and sustainable economic growth, full and productive employment, and decent work for all. The only way I can see them doing that is by killing off 80% of the people on the planet. Build resilient infrastructure, promote inclusive and sustainable industrialization, and foster innovation. Again, we remember those photos we looked at, pictures in the last video of biodiversity and the planning to fence off most of the lands, forbidding humans from going on those lands. Reduce inequity within and among countries. Make cities and human settlements inclusive, safe, resilient, and sustainable. Ensure sustainable consumption and product patterns. You believe this stuff, really? Take urgent action to combat climate change. It doesn't say global warming here, and its impact. And without a doubt, I'm a bit of a techie scientist guy. With the HARP systems, the sky spraying of chemicals, and all the patents that are registered with the Patent Office, technologies, they can definitely control the weather. Conserve sustainability, use of oceans, seas, marine resources, and sustainable development. And I have figured out, after reading enough of this stuff, the New World Order and all this stuff is basically to be able to force people off their properties into the cities, and whoever these elitists are who want to own and control the world, want to steal all the resources of planet Earth. And to maybe not use so many resources, it is my opinion that they plan on killing off a huge portion of the people on Earth. My interpretation. Protect, restore, and promote sustainable use of terrestrial ecosystems, sustainable managed forests, combat desertification, halt and reverse land degradation, and halt biodiversity loss. So how are you going to stop the loss of fish disappearing in the ocean? Well, if you kill most of the people, there you go. Promote peaceful and inclusive societies for sustainable development, provide access to justice for all, and build effective, accountable, and inclusive institutions at all levels. Strengthen the means of implementation and revitalize the global partnership for sustainable development. So anyways, there's how many items there? Quite an impressive document if you go look it up. And it appears to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 13, 17 points. And out of each one of these points, this point 17, look at the list of things they're going to enforce on point 17. Point 16. I don't want to go through them all. Point 14. Point 6. Point 1. I think that one point there I'd like to look at again, though. Number 5. Let's take a look at number 5. Achieve gender equality and empower all women and girls. So what is the nitty-gritty on that on this sheet here? End all forms of discrimination against all women and girls everywhere. All right, guys. Better toughen up. But then again, they want you to be gay and feminine. Eliminate all forms of violence against all women and girls in the public and private spheres, including trafficking and sexual and other types of exploitation. I wish they would leave the little boys alone too. Eliminate all harmful practices such as child, early and forced marriage, and female genital manipulation. I'm against any kind of forced anything on people. Recognize and value unpaid care and domestic work through the provisions of public services, infrastructure, social protection policies, and the promotion of shared responsibility within the household and the families as nationally appropriate. What kind of laws are they going to make that make people do their share of work every day? What happens if you don't want to go to work? Can't be too good. Ensure women's full and effective participation and equal opportunities for leadership at all levels of decision-making in political, economic, and public life. These are the leaders of the United Nations, controlled by the Mystery School of Babylon elitist Zionist Masons, which, by the way, are the guys who go to the Bohemian Grove and throw a baby in the fire, where women are prohibited from going in there. They say one thing and they do another. Ensure universal access to sexual reproductive health and reproductive rights as agreed in accordance with the Program of Action and the International Conference on Population and Development of the Beijing Platform for Action and the outcome documents for their review conferences. You believe that? Undertake reforms to give women equal rights into economic resources as well as access to ownership and control over land and other forms of property. We saw the diversity documents there where they plan on fencing off half the planet. Financial services, inheritance, and natural resources in accordance with national laws. Enhance the use of enabling technology, in particular information and communication technology, to promote the empowerment of women. And I'm for all for women being equal to men. I've never thought different. Enhance the use of enabling technology, which is adopt and strengthen sound policies and enforcement legislation for the promotion of gender equality and the empowerment of all women and girls at all levels. Well, we know what's going on with the homosexual, bisexual, transgender, pedophilia situation in the world. I don't believe that United Nations sustainable stuff. I believe it's part of a tool, an excuse to take over our property rights and our freedoms and our resources in the United States. Somebody wants control all over the resources all over the world. And when they do get in control, as the protocols of Zion say, or the book, the report from Iron Mountain says, hell will be let loose on planet Earth. A lot of people will be in for a big surprise. Thousands of Muslim invaders now disappearing from migrant camps. 11/2/2015. This is a kind of concerning issue if you think about it. If you've been watching TV, the news. Thousands and thousands of, I guess, Syrian refugees. Looks like mostly all men, healthy, strong men, moving into all these communities all over Europe. I guess shipping them here according to my press releases we're going to go over in this batch somewhere. In the middle of the night in Washington, D.C. and other city airports, planes are arriving, converted UPS planes for passengers, UPS cargo planes, at middle of the night, and buses waiting and dispersing these Arabs all over the United States in secret places. Could they be putting troops in place for a war, an invasion? They're doing it over Europe. They're doing it here. And they all, mostly men, healthy, strong, coming into the USA, going over there. Something's a little strange. But anyways, thousands of Muslim invaders now disappearing from migrant camps. So I'm reading this, thinking that, going, oh my. I read a lot of press releases, so I can formulate some kind of common denominator activity, which is why I'm doing these videos, the New World Order, media and press releases. As we watch the invasion of Europe by alleged Muslim migrants, who are really Muslim invaders, the stories have gone from Islamic gangs raping women and children and plundering churches and schools in Germany, to the fact that many of the Muslims the Germans were tracking have now begun to disappear from some of the migrant camps. And we got all this fear-mongering going on. U.S. Intelligence Director, October 27, 2015. And remember, I said most people can handle about 5 things in their weekly routine: taking care of the family, taking care of the job, maybe football, maybe reading, maybe going out doing something else, You can handle about 5 important things on your mind and remain mentally healthy. But once it starts to get to be 6 and 7 and 8 and 9 and 10, all these concerns you see on TV and worrisome stock market crashes, threats of World War III, comet coming in, pole shift, plagues, it starts to make people mentally shut down. The government and the mind control people and the secret black op programs people have been researching this for 100 years. They know this. So anyways, to add a little bit more troublesome things to the mind, U.S. intelligence director warns of Chinese attack on the power grid, cause Armageddon. Have you prepared your family for the collapse? I kid you not. Go look it up. Okay, if that isn't enough, I have what you call a Geiger counter meter sitting here. And it gives you the counts per minute. We're currently at 25 counts per minute. It's only about $100. But anyways, you can buy one of these. And if you log on the computer, it will hook you up to a thing on the internet where you can see everybody else who has one of those, and they publish the counts per minute. So anyways, 9/1/2015. Heads up here. The worst case is this one here. The yellow and red. Is that what it is? Yellow and black? Red and black. This is the normal. Elevated. Elevated. This is rising, elevated, and this is the worst one. Look at this map on this particular date. So the people in the world, there were like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, RADCOM 4 concerned states. My point being, why doesn't this make the news? Why weren't people in those cities alerted to stay indoors? Maybe get some iodine or something to help you with radiation poisoning. Just a concern. Might behoove people to get a meter. And this one hooks up to the computer. And go to this website, National Emergency Tracking Center, and check on it periodically. Alright, I got another interesting one here. Psychological resistance. I've gone over this before. Psychological resistance is the phenomena often encountered in clinical practice in which patients, either directly or indirectly, oppose changing their behavior or refuse to discuss, remember, or think about presumably clinical relevant experiences. So this would include, I've read this, you can go look it up on Wikipedia and read it for yourself. But all these things I'm talking about in these press releases, a lot of people, you try to talk to them and they will shut down. They've already had more than the 5 concerns going on in their weekly life. They're up to the 10. They have mentally shut down. It is called psychological resistance. Also called normalcy bias. So if you wonder why people act in such a dumb state and just don't want to acknowledge reality, that's why. I think about time to end this video. But I thought I'm just going document by document here and showing you whatever pops up here. And this was a little report I did on 11/30/2015, a little over a month ago. The National UFO Reporting Center State Report Index for North Carolina. Just North Carolina. Look at these UFOs that are reported. That whole page is for November. How many pages are for November? That was all November there. This whole page. Please go to nuforc.org. Check your state. But listen to some of this. This is reports made by people like you and me. Asheville, I looked this one up because one of my friends said, "Did you hear about the UFO sighting in Asheville, North Carolina?" And I said, "No, I didn't hear anything." So I went on the, just typed in UFO reporting site on my computer. That's all I did. And I took the first one that came up. And there was the rotating shape covered with white lights and a cylinder in the center. The top one on this list. How crazy is that? V-shaped object with 6 white lights. UFO on the ground next to a power pole. Orbs moving in sequence. I'm just spotlighting a couple of these. Orbs of light behind clouds circling around each other. During World War II, I think it was, they had something called the Foo Fighters. And these orbs were flying all around our U.S. Air Force ships on missions. They're flying ahead of them, behind them, circling around them. Round orbs popping in and out of existence. Some kind of spiritual beings, you think? Something more going on in the world than we know? And of course, this other document here, whatever it means. I'll end this video with this one, or the next one here. But I look into this stuff with the Egyptian hieroglyphics and this stuff about these Christ consciousness and aliens, UFOs. So anyways, over there in the Middle East, on the pyramids and other ancient monuments, you find these creatures. It just makes me wonder, who's behind the Mystery School of Babylon? And this thing about aliens and UFOs and sustainable development where they're lying, global warming where they're lying. Albert Pike having visions, Aleister Crowley, Helena Blavatsky, people of the New Age and the Masonic lodges, communicating with masters, interdimensional beings. And of course we got the Bible with Jesus, healing people, casting out unclean spirits, and all kinds of prophesizing what's up on the road ahead, multiplying fish and bread for the masses to feed them. There's more to reality than what we know. And I believe the elitists in control of our world are conspiring, get my words right, like George Bush and Blair going into Iraq. So who is this character? According to Zoroaster, Ahura Mazda created the universe and the cosmic order that he maintains. He created the twin spirits, Spenta Mayana and Agra Mayana, the former beneficial, choosing truth, light, and life. The latter destructive, choosing deceit, darkness, and death. The struggle of the spirits against each other that makes up the history of the world. This is the stuff that's on the ancient monuments over in Egypt. This is the stuff that's on all the books of the Freemasons that I've gone over. This is the stuff that's part of the Talmudic Zionist Kabbalah stuff. Witchcraft. New Age material. Just FYI. This is what we're dealing with. And another thing here, like I said, I'm just going over my document by document in my stack that I reached out. I remember investigating the snake. I keep talking about the snake. So I looked up a Jewish snake symbol. Go look it up when I keep talking about Yahoo image sites and stuff. This is what you're going to find. See the keywords up there? Jewish snake symbol. There's one right here we see on ambulances. This one here, you can go watch Texas Rangers. They have a star with the ring around it. The Egyptian hieroglyphics, a snake on the forehead. So, well, I guess there's one more here that might be interesting. Somebody sent me a information sheet. The Bolshevik Jews who plotted the Ukrainian Holocaust, over 7 million killed. I said when the Bolsheviks in 1917 were sent by people out of New York, D.C., London, Britain, the banksters, Illuminati, Zionists, into Russia. They killed over 100 million people, so it's said, over 10 years, many by starvation. 25 million admitted in one of the Israelis' major newspapers. 25 million. So they say that during World War II, 6 million Jews were killed. But we hear nothing about 25 million acknowledged Christians and other good people killed in Russia. All of the Christian churches demolished, but not the Jewish temples. And by the way, Masonic lodges are called temples. And in the Blue Lodge Handbook and all the Masonic books, if you took all the material about Judaism out of those books, there would be no books. It all references King Solomon's temple and other Jewish religious history. Lazar, Stalin's political figurehead of the Central Committee in 1928, led the implementation in the Ukraine of Stalin's first 5-year plan. The aim of Stalin's 5-year plan in the Ukraine was to destroy family farms. They're doing this in the United States now. Through the starvation, making the peasants landless and thereby introducing collectivism. They're going to fence off all the property in the United States. They're already taking away a lot of people's properties and opportunities. Introducing collectivism, by which the Ukrainian peasants were forced to become employees of the state. They're trying to do that in the United States and the world right now with that sustainable stuff. And in Europe and in other places around the world. We all have to become employees of the state and be microchipped. And the state is a Luciferic satanic organization. And if you do not denounce Christianity, they plan on maybe beheading everybody with those guillotines you can look up on YouTube. And the Noetic laws you can look up on YouTube, apparently, that they passed in secret. Most of Congress was already out for the day. There were only 4 guys left when they brought up this Noetic law thing. And all 4 guys, I guess, had planned this and voted to pass it, which they named unanimous approval. But only 4 guys were there. The whole House of Congress was gone. It's a deception. Anyways, Gingrich Yoguda, founder of the Soviet secret police, assisted in the first 5-year plan of starving Ukrainian peasants. Nikolai Yohov, appointed by Yoguda as head of the NKVD, assisted in the first 5-year plan of starving Ukrainian peasants. Yohova took on a Russian name like most Bolshevik Jews. His wife was an active Jew. These Bolshevik Jews seized livestock, crops, grain, farm implements from the Ukrainian peasants. Any Ukrainian citizen who resisted, heads up, was shot. Desperate Ukrainian clergy and peasants ate anything to survive: bugs, grass, and leather shoes. These are the same people behind the United Nations right now. These are the same Zionist people killing off the Palestinians. These are the same people who own most of the companies and material wealth of the world. The same people behind the New World Order and the New Age and the promotion of the homosexual agenda. And destroying Christianity and taking down the Christmas decorations on the White House and putting up the Jewish menorah. Just FYI. You must understand the leading Bolsheviks who took over Russia were not Russians. They hated Russians. They hated Christians. Driven by ethnic hatred, they tortured and slaughtered millions of Russians without a shred of human remorse. That's what's going on with this stuff. Remember, this is written by David D. Rothschilds. And they want to stop climate change. How can you stop climate change? And they recommend in this book to stop climate change, take a bath together. You can't make this up. To stop climate change, take a bath together. Bottle of wine. Look at that. I wonder, is there any chance people will wake up? More of my countrymen suffered horrific crimes at their blood-stained hands than any other people or nation ever suffered in the entire of human history. 25, 100 million peasants and Christians and churches destroyed. 1917. Never hear nothing about it. But the 6 million people killed in Germany, they say were Jews, which I think it was the evil Zionist Jews who were not Jews, if you read Revelation 9 in the Bible. Jews who call themselves Jews but are not. Apparently they're Khazarians or some other people, and their cohorts, all the bought and paid for politicians, elitists who do not want to lose their positions of power in the world. That's what this is all about, the New World Order. Bolshevism committed the greatest human slaughter of all time. And I suspect this world revolution, maybe here in the United States, will outdo the one they did in the Russian Revolution. And it's not planned on a single country revolution, the next one. It's supposed to be a world revolution. They want to disarm the people first. The fact that most of the world is ignorant and uncaring about the enormous crime is proof that the global media, that's why we're doing this series now, the New World Order media and press releases, is in the hands of the perpetrators. You can pause your computer and read it. And with that, I'll end this video, part 2. I've got many more documents to go over. It's going to take a while. Rick Miracle reporting.